Thank you for the honor of being here with you, and I'm going to get going rapidly. I'm going to start with the context, but then I'm really going to focus on concepts to help us all navigate the way out of this mess. And then I will get to some of the things on the way forward. So I got a lot to do, so let's get going. All right, the wonderful inter-Cold War period has ended. And while it lasted, China and Russia turned inward. The United States more or less followed the rules. And since people weren't funding opposing sides of insurgencies, growth compounded globally. Well, that's over. We have a whole bunch of continentalists on the march, and they think that the currency of power is territory. It is a negative-sum world order, as you're seeing, where the continentalists are just destroying wealth at a very rapid pace, whereas the alternative is the rules-based order, and that's how wealth compounds. It's positive sum, and it must survive. So if that's the problem, I'm a historian, so I reason inductively, so I'm going to give you some fun facts that you already know about. Donald Trump, before he even got into office, said he was going to impose these punishing tariffs on the immediate neighbors. He did, and then he went to everybody else as well, and people thought, oh, how could it get worse? Okay, year 2, month 1, and then we kidnap this charmer, and if everyone starts kidnapping each other's leaders, it's going to be chaos. And then the next month, it was Operation Epic Blunder, destroying wealth globally, which has transformed the United States into just about everyone's primary enemy by ruining their economies. It's called, this is a blunder, it's one for the history books. It is a pivotal error. Once you make a pivotal error, your choices afterwards are not nearly as good as the ones that you had before you made the blunder. For instance, the EU Obama administration deal that they worked with Iran, that the first Trump administration got rid of, that is a far better deal than whatever's going to happen out of the current mess. Okay, this mess offers both a challenge, all of these problems, but it's an opportunity. And if we don't leverage the opportunity of these existential threats to start solving some of these things, the existential threats may be the end of us. Because when some nuclear power is dictator with nuclear weapons is about to lose, you can make a guess that maybe he's going to decide his last day is everyone's last day. And look at the nuclear 9. Most of them are facing really difficult challenges, and some of them are just plain bonkers. Okay, so that's the problem. Now are some concepts that I'm going to share with you that I think are helpful. I've already done pivotal error. Now for limited and unlimited objectives. An unlimited objective in wartime is you're going to overthrow the other side. And if the most unlimited variant of that, it's a big spectrum of objectives you can see here, is you're going to also kill the defeated population. It's genocide plus regime change, most unlimited variant. But a limited war is the defeated is still going to be in power. That means you're going to be negotiating the peace with the other party that may live, well, it's going to live, and it may cause problems another day. Also, understand that in these limited wars, it's the defeated who decides when they end, because they decide when the costs of the war are too much and therefore giving up is the better bet. Something the United States ought to think about Iran, how these things are going to end. This yields 3 different variants of wars. So you can have a war where both sides have limited objectives. That would be like Bismarck's wars, where he's going to take things from Denmark or Austria, but all governments are going to be around at the end of the day. Or you can have wars at both sides, unlimited objectives, like World War II Europe, when if either the Axis or the Allies win that thing, the other side's governments are going away. Or you can have wars of mixed objectives. So that would be like World War II Pacific, where Japan had no intent on changing regimes in Washington, whereas Washington absolutely planned to overthrow the government in Tokyo. Okay, let's apply it to the current problem. Putin absolutely has unlimited objectives of the most unlimited type vis-a-vis Ukraine. Wants to overthrow the government, kill its members, and kill their family members down to small children. Also, Putin wants to eliminate Ukrainian culture, and he wants to eliminate the people who convey that culture. Okay, so that's regime change plus genocide. Flip it around for the Ukrainians. They have a limited objective. They don't intend to march on Moscow. They just want Russians to go home. They would love it if the Russians would overthrow their government, but that's not their objective. Okay, so now this brings me to another concept that I'll get into, which is death ground. If you have an unlimited objective, you're putting your enemy on death ground, which means for them, if they don't fight, you will kill them. So their only choice is to fight. And it is a clarifying experience. It really clears the mind for the target, who tend to fight with unbelievable ferocity. And you can transform the most dysfunctional place into a lethal adversary, as Hitler discovered with Russia, Putin's discovered with Ukraine, and the United States may well discover with Iran. So this clarifying event it doesn't change the targeter, but it can vastly harden the target. For instance, all these assassinations in Iran, the Iranians have nothing to lose now. There is no reason not to escalate whatever it is up the scale. Deterrence is done as far as those people are concerned. Okay, this brings me to another concept, which is value of the object. The valuation that each side puts to, if in wars, it would be war objectives, but in politics and whatever interest things they care about, this value of the object. But in wars, in general, those people who live in theater, they have the highest value of the object. The bombs are falling on them. And then those who live in the neighborhood nearby, they have a lower but still high value of the object. And then distant players, much lower value of the object. So when you're thinking about things in Iran, for the Iranians, it's existential. They care far more about the outcome of this even than Israelis do, and certainly far more than Americans do, and far more than the Republican Party that is enabling all of this, right? So there is enormous reasons for Iranians to stay the course for a very long time. Okay, not only can you differentiate objectives between positive, limited and unlimited, but also positive and negative, which is also useful. A negative objective is you're preventing something from happening. Think deterrence. If you deter, nothing happens. So not only is the objective invisible, but it's relentless, because every day you have to deter. It never goes away. You're constantly managing a situation, and you feel as if you're failing because it never resolves. Whereas a positive objective, if your problem is amenable to such a thing, positive objective, you can state what it is, you can achieve it, everybody can see it, that you've done it. Negative objectives are only visible in failure. Think about the United States back before World War II is deploying its Navy to Pearl Harbor to deter the Japanese from further expansion in Asia, and they don't see it as a deterrent. They said, aha, lucrative target, and they go sink it. All right. Another thing that's really important to keep in mind is look at other people, your enemies, your allies, neutrals, and you understand that everyone is prioritizing their enemies, and they're also prioritizing their interests. And you have to get a sense of these things, and they change. I can give you an example with the long Chinese Civil War that goes on from 1927 to 1949. The primary enemies for most of the time is the Communist Party under Mao Zedong and the Nationalist Party under Chiang Kai-shek. But when the Japanese extend their war, they start out in North China, but then they're going to move south into all of the rest of China in 1937. From then until 1945, when Japan's defeated, the primary enemy of both parties is Japan. But when they're defeated, they're back to being primary enemies again. The United States doesn't figure this out, and so after the end of World War II, the United States is busy trying to organize a coalition government, right? Two parties have a coalition government. Non-starter with primary enemies, don't even try. So you've got to keep track of how these interests of other people stack up, and also how it changes. Another example, so prior to World War II, you have Britain and Russia, they're primary enemies. But enter Hitler, and he works his magic. And not only does that transform Germany into the primary enemy of Britain and Russia, but also the United States. Whereas the Axis powers don't share primary enemies, and they're dispersing themselves in different theaters. So you've got to keep track of these changing situations. Okay, another set of concepts is certain conflicts in the world just go on forever and ever. They just seem never to change. Different instruments of national power being used, these frozen conflicts, it's because there are veto players who are preventing their resolution. I'll give you an example, the Korean War. 3 years, goes on forever and ever. The West wanted it to end as soon as possible. By year 2 out of 3, the Chinese and the North Koreans agreed time to end. The South Koreans didn't, but the United States had leverage over them, and Russia also didn't agree and had no leverage over Stalin. That war only ends because within 2 weeks of this guy's death, the dictator, all of a sudden, the new Russian leadership, no one knows who it's going to be. They're in an existential power fight with each other that's not going to settle down for about a decade, and they get out of the Korean War immediately. So you should be aware when dealing with dictatorships, you should have a plan for what you're going to do with the magic decade when they're trying to sort out who the next dictator is going to be. All right, so let's apply all of this to the current Iran war. Israel and the United States have unlimited objectives vis-a-vis Iran. The value of the object for Israel's far greater than for the United States, but for Iran, they're on death ground. Their value of the object is existential. And the Iranians have discovered there's a real asymmetry between destruction and construction. Easy to destroy things, hard to replace them. So they're leveling oil infrastructure all over the Middle East. If they start targeting the desalination plants, they're going to cause instant catastrophe to their industrialized neighbors. And what's more, this war has opened a Pandora's box because the Iranians have discovered their superpower, which is closing down the Strait of Hormuz, which means that they can hostage the entire global economy. Woo. And now that they've discovered it, don't expect them ever to forget that they have it. Massive collateral damage. The United States has done such collateral damage, it's got enemies all over the place who've now decided that our former allies, I would suspect you included, are thinking, okay, we got to use China as the counterbalance to US lunacy. That's like one for the history books to make these kind of errors. Okay, it is undistinguishable. It puts, you cannot hide this error. It puts the Republican Party on death ground because this is their responsibility. How did you do it? All right, so now here's some other concepts that are useful, I think, to disaggregate the layered effects of political decisions and military ones as well. Strategic, operational, tactical levels of strategy. I'm going to use the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor to differentiate the first two, strategic and operational levels. If you look at the Pearl Harbor attack, it is one of the most brilliantly executed military naval operations in human history. The Japanese go over massive spaces. No one's detecting them. And then all the US battleships are lined up around Ford Island and Pearl Harbor. They sink all those, plus the planes in neighboring Hickam Field, and they suffer almost no damage of their own. And it looks great on that day, except this is what it yields within the next 4 years. Tokyo destroyed, along with virtually every other Japanese city. If this is supposed brilliance at the operational level of war, if it yields this kind of strategic outcome, it's not brilliant. It's disastrous. Okay, now for the tactical level. So Trump invites Zelensky for what Zelensky probably thought was a routine photo opportunity at the White House, and then Trump and Vance break all rules of protocol and try to humiliate their guests. Okay, so this is the tactic of two native English speakers trying to humiliate a guest. Okay, and maybe it plays well to Trump's political base for a few days until they've long ago forgotten about it. At the operational level, for any other country watching this, the level of vanity and unprofessionalism is breathtaking. Look at all this rude American hand-waving to your guest. Who does that? And at the strategic level, it gets worse because it makes clear that for former allies that they must reorient their foreign policies and their economies away from the United States. And like Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, these kind of errors are enduring and self-harming. It's not going to go away. The Republican Party that has been enabling all of this, they're worried about an operational level problem is getting reelected. They're not thinking at the strategic level, like, what's the point of being elected in the first place? Like, why bother? Go knock yourself out, stay at home. But it used to be the answer for the Republican Party and also for much of the Democratic Party. The answer used to be, the reason you do this is to improve the security and prosperity of your children and your grandchildren. Well, this war isn't improving anyone's security. It's wrecked the alliance system that once made the United States strong. And it's also wrecking prosperity globally. The problem for all of this, for the Republican Party, is they're on death ground because they've enabled all of this. And they're scared to death because should they lose power, many of them will face jail terms for corruption, for failing to honor their oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and for some of them, treason. Because I understand that Russia has been helping Iran, targeting our troops. Who the hell does that? And we also know that Russia has been trying to undermine the West and the United States for a number of years. So expect them to double down. And the midterm elections, watch for them. It'll tell you whether the United States is going to continue its precipitous decline or whether it's decided to wake up. All right, so what's the way out of this mess? The stepping stones of sound strategy are assessment, setting a feasible policy objective, and then a strategy to get there and constant reassessment. You might go, well, why say feasible policy objective? Who would want an unfeasible one? Well, actually, people often set unfeasible policy objectives, and it gets them thrown out of power. And the way to get a feasible objective is you've got to do a really sound assessment. So assessment is not only, I'm going to assess my strengths and your weaknesses, that would yield a best case scenario, but also my weaknesses and your strengths, the part that the Trump administration neglected to do. So you need to make a really sound assessment of what's up and what to do. And now, the problem is we've got to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, right? That's the current issue. And the question is going to be at what point, at what cost? So that's a naval issue because it's about ships transiting a choke point that's currently under blockade. All right, let's look at the geography of NATO. Look at North America and look at Europe. Europe is one big peninsula. Both those places border on the oceans, right? You can't blockade those places. Blockades don't work from oceans. Very difficult, and I suspect in the age of drones it's even worse. Okay, let's check out Eurasia. Look at all the narrow seas. Narrow seas is where you blockade people. Oh, and the part that the Trump administration hasn't figured out, big ships can close narrow seas, without a doubt. They cannot open them. People on the shorelines decide whether those seas are going to open or not going to open, which is what Iran has discovered. But all of these places mean that geography is inherently contained Russia and China. And you might go, oh, but look up in the Arctic, the Barents and the Bering Sea where Russia has its big naval bases, surely that gets them out. It doesn't because no one lives up there, right? And that's not where industry is very difficult to supply in wartime. So nature has inherently contained these places, but it creates a problem for what you're going to do about Hormuz. All right, so I mentioned that we're facing challenges. I've laid them out, but there's also an opportunity. With the United States' renunciation of leadership of the West, that role has come home to Europe, the inventor of the West. And you will be the leaders of the democracies going forward. And I think the West is a passé term. What I use now is the democratic core of Europe, Canada, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia, and anyone who wants to behave and join, is you will be the leaders of streamlining and reforming existing regional and international institutions, and where if you can't do that, then creating parallel institutions eventually to take over, because you need to leverage the existential threat that the continentalists are now posing to return us to this spheres of influence. We're all going to kill each other world order, which most tragically the real estate mogul in chief seems to want to join. It'll destroy wealth so rapidly, it is unbelievable. So you all can do it. So look what happened to your grandparents' generation, where they're faced with a really difficult threat. Look what they did in 10 years. They created all of these institutions that held the peace for a decade. Now's your turn, and you can do it because these guys have put democracies on death ground. If we don't all do what we can do, we aren't going to escape this. but there are many things that we can do. When I think about businesses, you all depend more than anybody else, or as much as anybody else, on this rules-based order. And as you're discovering, as it falls apart, like the rules about freedom of navigation, that's the current mess, that people aren't following those. And think about it, if the rules are gone, who's going to enforce your contracts without the rules? Who's going to prevent people from expropriating your assets? You're going to have to be running around with a suitcase full of cash to go bribe people and hire your own mercenary armies. It's incredibly inefficient. So all of us must do what we can to prevent this outcome. And there are plenty of smart people in Europe to do this. So look at me. I'm a nobody. I don't know how I wound up here, but here I am, right? I'm just a retired professor. I got a few concepts. I've done my best to give them to you. Think about you. You have global connections. You can make a huge difference. If we don't all do everything that we can do, and if the continentalists win, it will be regrettable. Think of what happens to independent-minded businessmen in continental states. In Russia, they fly out of sixth-floor windows with no parachutes. In China, they get long jail sentences. If we don't win this thing, everyone's going to have nothing but regrets, and our children and grandchildren will curse us for not having done more. Thank you very much for your attention.
Back on the stage, I have a few questions for you. Thank you so much.
I tried to escape.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I have a few questions about Norway, but I would like to start with Europe, because you argue that leadership in the West is shifting back to Europe as the US steps back. My question is Europe actually ready to take on that role?
Are you trying to tell me Europe suffers for lack of smart people? I mean, give me a break. You have plenty of smart people. And I think about how much you've done in the last 2 years. It's breathtaking. History's moving really, really fast. How many free trade agreements have been signed? And now, my understanding, you know more than I do, of trying to set up a European-based internet architecture, global payment system. You're going to cease buying U.S. arms because you're going to build your own. You're going to make them cheap, unlike the crazy stuff the United States makes. You can't afford to use it. And you're working on de-dollarization. You have no problems. But you must leverage this existential threat, because that'll break through the bureaucratic bottlenecks that have been holding things back. And you've got a magic few years here to do it. So please do it for all of our sakes.
Looking at a country like Norway, we are a small, wealthy economy that depends on the world around us. What are the biggest mistakes we risk making right now?
It's such a joke. I'm a professor telling you anything. But anyway, look at the United States as a negative example about what not to do. You need allies, you need friends, and you need to get, what are institutions? They're not buildings, they're about people who organize themselves to deal with a certain set of problems. If you're in the aluminum industry, I presume it has to do with aluminum, but if you're in other things, so make good institutions so that you are powerful together, so that together you'll be more powerful than alone. And Norway, my impression is that many of the countries around the Baltic Sea have been organizing together and very thoughtful. Keep going.
Mm. You also mention, you talk about death ground. What does that mean for Norway and NATO in the high north?
Death ground means someone wants to come in and kill you. I believe that's what Vladimir Putin, if he had his dreams, right? And then we have crazy stuff coming out of Washington. I get it, China's a long way away, but it may well try to kill your industry, right? So other people do this to you, and then either you can sit around and do nothing, and they will come and eat your market share or whatever it is, or you can do something about it. So you have previous generations. I just listed what they did. Why can't you do better? You have better educations than they were ever had, right? So now is your time.
But what should we do?
Or organize. Well, you could, in the business community, you must know everybody. Talk to people about what you can do, what needs to be done. Talk sense to your American counterparts to tell, there's a real key, stop funding continentalists anywhere. They're dangerous. Sure, operationally, somebody you might care about gets into political power. that's ruinous if it destroys the prosperity and security of your children. So.
And finally, what is the one advice you could give to the leaders in this room? As you just said, they have connections, they know someone.
Lead, right? This is your moment of not sitting back. I've tried to give you some concepts to organize thoughts, but you have plenty of smart people. This war, this Operation Epic Blunder, leverage it. It's such a disaster, but get a silver lining out of that cloud to get really good institutions that are going to protect Europe. You can do it, and the United States needs to come back to where it belongs, but it's unclear. We'll watch how the elections go.
Thank you so much, Sarah Paine.
Yep, pleasure. Thank you so much.